Well, we spoke about the dangerous situation for the Jewish community and Jewish students in Canada. But unfortunately, it's not just Canada where Jewish students are facing hate. Here to speak with us about the situation on campuses in the U.S. and globally, as well as the response, is Reichman University's Jonathan Davis. Jonathan, thank you so much for being with us today.
And thanks for having me.
Of course. So I wanted to start off with, we're seeing some shocking scenes from campuses in response to this war in Gaza. What are you hearing from students?
Well, what I'm hearing from students is unpleasant feelings on their part. In various countries in Europe, in South Africa, in North America, unpleasant feelings. I mean, I used to feel sometimes anti-Semitism from certain professors from the Ivy League university in which I studied at the time, but now it seems to be flaming a lot more.
And you mentioned Ivy League universities. We've seen some pretty shocking scenes from faculty and administrations in some cases in response to this operation as well. What have you seen and what has been the response of university administrations in dealing with this problem?
Well, first of all, Reichman University, which teaches in English and has students from 90 different countries, 30% of our student body actually studies in English. Our professors, many of our professors, come from those same Ivy League universities. Many of our professors come from Harvard, Yale, Columbia, Princeton, from Stanford, from other places. And they're shocked and they're horrified, be they left, center, or right, in their political feelings. They are shocked, horrified, and disappointed at the administration of those universities and how it handled the problem over there. And the Jewish students felt like orphans in many cases. The Jewish students felt very insecure, and the Jewish students felt helpless in many cases because people who support Hamas or people who were supporting the destruction of the state of Israel from the river to the sea, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Those Jewish students felt not only academically and intellectually disappointed, but also physically, sometimes physically taunted by these individuals. But sometimes these challenges and problems can also lead to opportunities.
I was going to ask you, my next question for you was, what do you think can be done from both the perspective of the faculty there and the students?
First of all, I don't believe in fear tactics. So I would never say to a student at some university, come to Israel to study because you might get beaten up by someone. So I don't believe in fear tactics, but what I do believe is that I think some of the administrations of some of these universities should be punished by their donors and by their supporters. I think it's fair. I mean, you can't necessarily support an academic chair somewhere, and the next day, that same professor is going to be raving anti-Semitic curses or voting for the destruction of the state of Israel if you're the guy that gave the funds for that. It could be quite disappointing for the donor, to say the least. So that's one thing which is already taking place. I saw a list of 130 top donors of universities in the States who have pulled out. And so they've got leverage in having an impact. Countries like Qatar, which have plowed something like $2.5 billion over the years into top American universities, they've bought their way through. So Qatar, which is Hamas terrorist supporting country, basically donates hundreds of millions of dollars to certain Ivy League universities, and all of a sudden they have some of the top academic chairs in which they can profess what they would like to profess.
Right.
Okay? Academic freedom, academic truth, Qatar style.
Right.
Okay? Which is interesting. You have a combination of a terrorist state, and on the other hand, that some of these universities overt liberalism. But the twain shall meet when it comes to financial support. But for the students at these universities, I strongly recommend to look at the option of studying at my university, Reichman University. And why do I say that? A, we teach in English. B, there's no anti-Semitism. C, if you put up a poster for our hostages, nobody is going to rip it down. Okay, you won't have an altercation about that. Come to a university which has a shloshim, okay, for the fallen soldiers of that university. Come to a university where you can wear Magen David overtly and not feel badly about it. And come to Israel, where there's very little crime, and which is pretty safe, actually. All things being said, my grandchildren are still walking the streets of Ra'anana and having a good time. And
I wanted to add about Reichman University that there's also a lot of non-Jewish population as well. It's actually a very diverse student body.
It's a very diverse group of people. We have a lot of Africans who have come to study, especially sustainability and other subjects which they want to bring back to Africa. We've got many non-Jewish people from the East, people from China and South Korea and Singapore and other countries, from India and so on and so forth. So it's a university which respects the rights of all of the other people, be they Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Buddhists, Jains, whatever they happen to be, and tolerant of everyone. So if you feel like being who you want to be at Reichman University, I call it humanistic, pluralistic Zionism.
Amen. Well, thank you. Thank you so much for joining us, Jonathan.
My absolute pleasure.